Greetings, everyone. This is LT Coaster from the Cardboard Barracks with another episode of your weekly quest. This week, we're continuing our good and bad series with Star Wars: The Old Republic. Like last week, we're going to start with the good. The best thing, I think, to ever happen to Star Wars: The Old Republic since launch is free to play, which was just recently implemented. This is honestly the best thing that could have happened to the game. Let's face it, the game was not doing so hot, had high expectations that just weren't met by the community, and the added subscription fee added a barrier to entry, which in all honesty, left for some low sales. However, with the newly implemented free-to-play, I think it's going to breathe new life into the game. Sure, it's limited, but it'll bring new players in, and new players using their microtransaction market called the cartel coin market, and it's going to be great, or hopefully it'll be great. Time will tell, but so far it's looking good. The second thing that SWTOR does really, really well is the story in the game. My God, they have 8 fully fleshed out stories for each of the classes, all different, all with branching points that can drastically change depending on your choices. It's great. It adds context to the quests you do. Every quest is voice acted, except for maybe 1 or 2 that I could think of that I found. But other than that, it's great. And it might be a little slow for some, but if you're a person who likes story in their games and likes context for the quests, can't go wrong here. Also, one thing that I really liked about this game is you can upgrade your weapons at tool stations. This is a great idea because especially for the Jedi classes, Jedi and Sith classes, any class that uses a lightsaber, you're building your weapon and you don't have to get rid of it, and that just kind of feels nice. Like in WoW, you get this awesome axe, damn, looks badass, but then next patch you get a new axe, and the axe that you thought was so awesome you can't use it anymore, and the new one might not even look as cool. So that's just a really nice system, and it could be done with all the classes, even the range classes that use guns. Unfortunately, though, SWTOR does have a lot of bad that it really still needs to fix. And one of the biggest problems for me, at least in the game, is the areas. They are really, really boring. Honestly, you look at it and the planets are they kind of look cool. They're green fields, deserts. Hoth was pretty cool. Those areas are nice, but then you go to Coruscant, and it's all the same gray hallways, gray platforms. And part of this really isn't BioWare's fault for making these areas boring. It's just the genre of their game. Sci-fi has always been really hard to make really interesting areas because, it's futuristic. Everything's gray and muddled and is this sleek look, and it just doesn't feel as nice exploring as World of Warcraft or Lord of the Rings Online or Guild Wars 2. Again, it's not really their fault, and there's really not a whole lot they can do to change it, and especially in the MMO market where you don't want everyone flying around on speeders going up and down. Instead of having a 360-degree axis for characters to move around, they just want one plane to walk on land, and it kind of takes away from the experience and from exploring. At least for me, it's the story is the only reason why I want to go around the next corner. And, I feel like they could fix it. Another thing is classes. They all feel so similar. You play a Jedi Knight or Sith Warrior, same fucking thing. Jedi Counselor, Sith Inquisitor, pretty much the same thing. And then the gun classes all feel the same. The stories are different and they have different voice actors, but all the skills just feel the same. All the gameplay feels the same. Even when you're doing the different specs, heal, DPS, or tank, it all just feels the same. And it's kind of a shame because the way they made it look that was all the classes would just feel and play differently, but in all honesty, they really don't until maybe the very later levels, and even then I'm being very generous with that statement. The other problem that I have is visual flair of the game. Jedi, anyone that uses a lightsaber or close range combat, you get a lot of visual flair, a lot of blocking attacks, swinging sabers, stabbing people. It all looks very nice. The animation is very good. But for the range classes, you don't really get that. You're far away behind a box, just shooting people, and they fall down, and that's kind of boring. And the blasters don't even look the same. The grenades look the same for every class. And it's kind of a shame because, even when you're healing, or like I played a Jedi counselor and I was healing, and I just wave my hand and green text debuffs, and it's kind of boring. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm healing. Like in World of Warcraft, at least when you heal, you get a visual, you get visual stimulation that you're healing or damaging or doing something. And SWTOR, you don't really get that unless you're a Jedi Knight or a Sith warrior, because you're stabbing everyone. And again, it's kind of a shame, and I wish they would have fixed that. But by this point in the game, it's really too late for that. Now, for the interesting part of the show, the good but poorly implemented. We have 2 topics of discussion for that today. First off, we're going to start with the legacy system. This one is more of a personal pet peeve rather than a bad system. And that's just because I think it's really strange to see a Sith pureblood running around as a Jedi Knight or on any part of the Republic. It just feels weird. Like, yeah, giving them other abilities from other classes, that's great. Love it. Just other races from, Sith-specific races, that just feels weird. Like, it just doesn't feel right to me, but that's a personal pet peeve, so take that with a grain of salt. The other thing would be story dungeons. Story dungeons were a fantastic idea, just great on paper, and they have one of them. The very first dungeon you can do at your respective levels on your respective factions. It's a huge sweeping story going between ship and ship and ship, and it looks so cool, and it's really awesome. But that's the only one that really has that big story element, and it's a shame because that made the dungeons really stand out. Otherwise, they're just gray hallways with enemies in there. And no one likes that. I mean, it just doesn't feel it. It goes back to World of Warcraft. Like, it's visually unappealing. That's probably the biggest problem with Star Wars: The Old Republic. Is just visually it's a bore. Like, nothing really pops out. Nothing really looks cool. The style is a weird mix of realism and cartoony. And I mean, it works, but it just doesn't have that visual flair that WoW does, or that Guild Wars 2 has, or even Rift. And, Rift isn't really pushing the visual department that much either. Now, another thing that was good idea, but poorly implemented, was the idea that your character is supposed to be a badass. In the game, you usually encounter mobs in groups of 3 or 4, if they're basic level mobs, like, not elites or anything like that. And while it's a really good idea on paper to make your character feel badass and like they could take on the world, it doesn't, like, it's a very bad way to get new players into the game, because I feel like it overwhelms them if they have no idea, like, how to play an MMO. Like, in every other MMO, you're usually pit up against one enemy at a time. This gives you an opportunity to learn your skills, learn how to fight, and learn how to defend yourself, because you're only worrying about what the enemy in front of you is doing, because there's only one. And you're like, oh, I can handle this. But in SWTOR, you're taking on 3 at a time, so that's a little daunting for people who have never played the game before and they're being attacked from all sides. SWTOR, don't get me wrong, it's a great MMO. Do I think it's, revolutionary or what it was all hacked up to be? Not at all. I think it has a lot of work that it needs to be done with if it's going to make it good. And, yeah. Anyways, that's all I have for you guys this week. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please subscribe and like it. Watch out my other friends' videos on the channel. They're really good. And next week, we're probably going to go into more Rift or Guild Wars 2. I haven't quite decided yet, but it'll be a surprise for all of us. Till next time, guys, have a great week.